Tiger 400 would have been an instant hit, and yet Triumph decided to go with modern retros as their first single-cylinder motorcycle of modern times. Of course, Triumph makes a variety of motorcycles, so they could have literally made anything. A street naked, a full-fed motorcycle, a Tiger like I said, anything would have literally worked. However, they still went with a modern classic. And that's because in the premium entry-level space, modern classics are where all the money is, which means that they have to go up against that brand, Royal Enfield. And to take them on, Triumph has introduced two motorcycles. But Speed and Scrambler, two nameplates that haven't really worked for the brand in the modern times. So why go with these two brands? Think about it this way. To go up against the Classic 350, they would have had to do a Bonneville 400. Even with that higher displacement, that wouldn't have really ensured that they would be able to hit that bike, hit that fortress strong enough. And that wouldn't have given the single-cylinder Triumphs kind of start that they would have liked. It's like opening a new joint right next to a very well-established, heritage-rich restaurant and then offering the exact same dish. It may work sometimes, but usually people don't succeed. Think about the Honda Highness. Think about the contraptions from Yazdi and Java. Nothing really worked, which is why this works. In comparison, Triumph offers a very different dish, a very different taste. Of course, it may take only a few customers away from that established brand, but in the long run, it might just be the more sustainable approach. So why are we even comparing these motorcycles if they aren't exactly the same breed? Simply because the pricing of the Triumph and the Classic 350 is closely matched, and the Hunter appeals to a similar audience who have a young bent of mind. The Harley-Davidson X440 could have been a good addition to this comparison, but it's not here for multiple reasons. Let's go back to that food court analogy. Think of the Harley-Davidson as somewhat an in-between, a fusion dish, something like the tandoori momos, pizzas with momos on them. It may work once in a while, but no one really craves it, desires it. Also, Harley-Davidson simply did not want to be a part of this story, maybe because they are not confident of winning this comparison. In fact, the overall confidence around that product seems a bit lukewarm. We have been told that they are pulling back all the press fleet because of some mechanical issue. Now that certainly doesn't sound very good, especially if you're going to be one of those early adopters of the X440. The KTM 390 Duke is missing from this comparison simply because it's a very different genre of motorcycle, a street fighter, even though the performance is comparable. And with the new one set to make its India debut by the time you watch this review, it's a story we'll have to keep for another day. And if you'd rather have those levels of performance with a round headlight and more modern touches in the bodywork, a new Husqvarna 401 lineup is also in the works, and this time it is coming to India. Back to these three motorcycles then. Which one should you choose for street presence? All three do a great job at this. The Hunter 350 looks funky and youthful, and even a non-RE rider wants to get a second glance, and that explains its instant success. The Speed 400 goes with a racy styling too, but in a typical Triumph way. The colors, the stance, the attention to detail, like the headlights and the taillights for example, it immediately makes it look and feel premium. So get this if you want that feel-good factor. The Classic 350 is easily the best looking retro motorcycle in this space. And if old school is your vibe, simply stick to this tried and trusted nameplate. The Speed 400 may look like it's the smallest of the lot, but it's the most well put together. The fit and finish is top notch, the paint quality is really good, and looking at the Pulsar 250s and how they are aging, I think it will withstand the test of time. Let's hope so at least. Now there are a few bits here and there, like the exhaust for example. You can see that the header pipe or the collection chamber, that is rusting a bit. The logo is starting to lose its detailing. So all these tiny bits are there, but of course this is a prototype. And even if it wasn't, I think the powder coated engine will be far more enduring to our conditions compared to something like the Classic 350, especially with all that chrome on it. The similar thing goes for the Hunter 350 as well. That black engine or the powder coated engine works for the Hunter as well. So overall, I quite like it. Now, though I say that this is the best put together, the Royal Enfields aren't too far behind. They are leaps and bounds ahead of what Royal Enfield used to be back in the past.
The quality, the fit and finish is just top-notch on those motorcycles as well. This one just edges ahead.
Which of these is more comfortable to ride?
The suspension setup on the Hunter is a little on the stiffer side. Now the front is nice and supple, but the rear is especially pretty firm. With a pillion, with luggage, it works quite well, but if you're riding alone, you will feel the rear to be a bit jumpy. So in terms of the balance, the Classic actually does a better job. Once you get used to the weight of the motorcycle, you'll actually enjoy the way it goes around corners, the way it tackles bad roads. That balance is really good. But of course, the Tiger 400, that's the one that achieves the best balance when it comes to suspension. But the overall balance on this bike is something that I like. It's a testimony to the fact why this still remains one of the popular touring motorcycles in the country, even with the advent of so many adventure bikes. That's it. If you're planning to choose between the two Royal Enfields for primarily doing your urban duties and then also doing touring every now and then, this is the better touring motorcycle. That, in my books, is more of that easygoing urban runabout. Now, on the topic of touring, tire choices. The Hunter is interestingly going to give you a wider option to choose from because you have 17-inch rims, both front and back, so you'll have a wider range of tire options to choose from. This one goes with a 1918 setup, which works for its old school styling, works with the handling as well, but in terms of the tire choices, it is going to limit your options quite a bit. The saving grace, however, is that you can choose alloy wheels on this if you want, and that gives you the option to use tubeless tires. Now, if you are looking at a similar setup again and now also introducing the Triumph in the mix, if you're going to be doing a lot of touring, in that case, the Speed 400, nice motorcycle, but for a lot of touring, I think I would want to wait for the Scrambler 400. With the longer suspension travel, with the more scrambler intent, it is better equipped to take on our roads, which means the scope of touring is a lot wider than what either of these three motorcycles will offer you.
Which is the best bike for mountain roads? The torquey engine in the Royal Enfields will allow you to scale some of the steepest mountain roads in the country, but in a laid-back manner. The Speed 400, on the other hand, will ensure that every bit of cornering and mountain riding experience is a rewarding one, and a sprightly one at that. The engine packs plenty of punch, and the premium suspension shows its superiority with how much feel and confidence it offers.
It's astonishing how many different kinds of engines we have now sampled in this particular segment. Java, Harley Davidson, Hero, Honda even. And then this engine, it's still so surprising that they actually managed to make an engine that feels more refined than even a Honda single. And that speaks volumes about what this engine feels like. It's got so much character that it's very difficult to choose, any other engine over this particular engine. Even if it doesn't do the kind of speeds that the Speed 400 will do, there's still something very likable about this motor. And then things are going to get more confusing when you see the same motor in multiple bikes. You have these two, you also have the Meteor. Now these two are the more relaxed positions, right? That's more of a cruiser, the Meteor. So if you have to choose between these two, it's finally going to boil down to the ergonomics. It's finally going to boil down to the weight. However, there's also a little bit of tuning difference between these two. I would side with that. That bike puts a smile on my face every single time I ride it. Doesn't matter where it is, city, highway, even twisties.
How do they match up on fuel economy? Well, the Triumph coming so close on the economy figures, despite offering a sprightly performance, is commendable. Further savings could also be in the service department, where Triumph claims a 16,000 km service interval. The overall service costs, however, should be comparable to the Royal Enfields.
A lot of spec sheet experts will tell you that there's a lot of common elements between the Dominar and the Speed 400. There aren't. It's only the bore that is common between the two. And that's only because it gave Bajaj a good starting point, or gave Triumph a good starting point while designing this engine. It's like a reference point. Think of it to be the grid on your camera app on your phone. It just tells you what a good frame can look like, where the subject can be placed, and then you can start designing everything else around it. That's exactly what the Dominar did for the Speed 400. But honestly, after riding this bike and that bike back to back, you will feel that this is how the Dominar should have been. Punchy, comfortable, and more importantly, light. The Hathi Mat Palna advertising was more like me fat-shaming another fat biker. I mean, that's just wrong. This bike is also what the new generation of the Pulsars should have been like. 400cc, power just shy of a 390 Duke, a very nice and sculpted tank, round headlight, peppy performance, easy to zip around town. This just brings back memories of the OG Pulsar. That's how good it is. So thinking of this motorcycle to be a Bajaj in Triumph clothing is not a bad thing. In fact, the performance is so good and so close to bikes like the Dominar or the 390 Duke that it makes the other modern retros start feeling as exciting as watching grass grow.
All these three motorcycles are full of emotion then, but excel at different things. And the choice will boil down to what kind of engine, handling or styling resonates with you. And in that sense, the Speed 400, despite being a good motorcycle, won't really dent Royal Enfield all that much. If anything, it will simply expand the size of the market. And that is win-win for everyone.